In today's episode, we will celebrate Israel's independence. We'll learn about the biblical covenant, the kingdoms of Israel, the conquering of the land by the Romans, resulting in the exile of the Jewish people, and their return to their ancient homeland, culminating in the establishment of the modern Jewish state of Israel. Israel's only around 8,000 square miles, making it smaller than New Jersey, El Salvador, Taiwan, and so many other places, and yet it receives much of the world's attention. In today's episode, we are going to learn how the Jewish people restored their national independence in their ancestral homeland after 2,000 years living under the rule of others. It all begins with God's promise to Abraham that the land would be given to his descendants, the Jewish people, forever. The Jewish people entered the Promised Land after the exodus from slavery in Egypt. This lasted almost 1,400 years until the Romans besieged the holy city of Jerusalem and destroyed the Second Temple on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. The Jewish people lost their independence. Since then, the majority of Jews have been scattered amongst the different nations around the world in what is known as the diaspora. They've faced many inquisitions. The most notable was the Spanish Inquisition of 1492. They faced Holocausts like the one from 1941 to 1945, when Nazi Germany murdered over 6 million Jews, a full third of their entire population. As other cultures assimilated, the only people who stood strong are the Jewish people, who have managed to retain their way of life, their Torah, the Bible. In the late 19th century, Jews from around the world began to return to their homeland. Jews from Morocco, Romania, Yemen, Russia, Iran, Germany, Syria, and later even Ethiopia, as well as so many other places at the same time began to return home to Israel. And this is just incredible. Think about that. In 1882, Jews would begin to return en masse to their ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. In particular, a group of Romanian Jews would settle on this hilltop called Givat Zamarin, which would eventually be known as Zichron Yaakov. At the beginning of World War I, Sarah Aronson was living in Istanbul. Fearful for the safety of her family, she decided to return to the land of Israel. Along the way, she witnessed the brutal slaughter of the Armenian people at the hands of the Turkish government. Realizing that this could happen to the Jewish people living in Israel, Sarah and her brother decided to assist the British government in defeating the Turks by establishing a spy network called Neely. In 1915, when Neely began their operation, it was in this cellar that they held their secret meetings. Sarah is captured and arrested by Turkish authorities. She's beaten and tortured during the interrogation process. However, she gives up zero information. Before being transferred to Damascus for further interrogation, she asked that she be brought to her brother's house so that she can bathe and change into fresh clothes. She comes into this room and opens up this secret box. And inside is a revolver. Here are the fresh clothes that Sarah never put on. Realizing she would be beaten to death if she didn't reveal any information, she used the revolver that she found in the secret panel, and instead of taking a bath, she took her own life, and with her, the secrets of Neely. They risked their lives in order to ensure that the British would be able to defeat the Turks, and we would eventually be able to declare our independence in our ancient homeland, the land of Israel.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
By the end of World War I, the British had defeated the Ottoman Empire and ended the 400-year Turkish occupation of the land of Israel. The area was then called the British Mandate. World War I ended in 1917, and the British Mandate was established. The Balfour Declaration of this same year said the entire region would be given to the Jewish people to establish a state in their ancient homeland. However, in 1923, the British went back on their promise to the Jewish people and gave away 75% of the British Mandate to the Hashemites, a Bedouin tribe, in order to create the Kingdom of Jordan. The British continued to alienate the Jewish people, and by 1939, instead of helping the Jewish people establish a state for their own, they limited the amount of Jewish immigration to 15,000 people a year. (1939) also marks the beginning of World War II and the Holocaust, when the Jewish people needed a place to call home, a place that would be safe for them. The Jews never gave up the hope of returning to their land. And in 1939, you have the beginning of what would become known as Aliyah Bet, or the clandestine immigration of Jews to the land of Israel. This clandestine immigration reached its peak between 1945 and 1948. After the Holocaust, where hundreds of thousands of Jews were in displacement camps, waiting for the opportunity to return home to the land of Israel. The Jews who were captured by the British, trying to enter the land of Israel without permission, were detained and sent to camps like the one here in Atlit. The camp was divided into two sections, one side for men, one side for women. Both were completely surrounded with barbed wire. And right here down the middle, it was patrolled by the British officers. I'm now walking through one of the reconstructed barracks, which would have housed roughly about 60 of the detainees. Now during the daytime, they were allowed outside the barracks to roam within the camp. But at night, they were confined to the inside. In order to keep themselves busy and entertained, they made games for themselves to play and to enjoy. Even though the barracks are reconstructed, the panels you see behind me are original. The reason why there's names inscribed on them is that many of the Jews who came here lost touch with their family during the Holocaust. They would inscribe their names hoping that a relative or somebody who knew them would know that they were alive. Across from the Rehovot Science Center on Kibbutz Hill stands the E09 Institute, otherwise known as the Bullet Factory, which tells one of the fascinating and mysterious stories in the history of the establishment of the State of Israel. During the British Mandate, right here, 24 feet beneath the ground, a factory was created for the secret production of 9mm bullets for the Haganah. Let's now take a closer look at how this factory worked. Kibbutz Hill Rehovot was designed with one purpose in mind: to produce 9mm bullets for the Haganah, which would eventually become the Israeli Defense Forces. In order to do that, they dug out the ground at a furious pace. 21 days it took to build a basement the size of a tennis court. Up above, they built two buildings, one of which we're standing in right now, the laundromat, for both the members of the kibbutz as well as a viable business in order to support it financially. The laundromat made so much noise that it would cover up the sound coming from the basement as the machines were roaring away, making those 9mm bullets. Just listen to this old laundry machine. That's a lot of noise. I'm now standing in the bakery, which was the second of two buildings built above the basement, which would become the bullet factory. The bakery both produced bread for the residents of the kibbutz, as well as another viable business selling bread to all the residents living in and around the area of Rehovot. However, the real purpose of the bakery was twofold. One, you could slide the heavy oven to the side, revealing a large hole, allowing the people to bring the equipment down into the basement for the bullet factory. Two, is that the chimney, which allowed the smoke to escape, also camouflaged as a ventilation system for the noxious fumes down below in the bullet factory itself. We're now standing in the main section of the factory. Each machine that you see around me had a particular purpose, whether it was stretching the brass, creating the caps, or the actual bullet itself. This is where the manufacturing took place. But where did all the brass come from? Well, the Haganah approached a factory owner in Yaffo and had him order the brass via the British Mandate in order to produce lipstick containers. Once we had the brass, we could bring it here to the secret factory and, of course, make the bullets with it. If this job wasn't dangerous enough, just imagine this. A few feet away from where the bullets are being produced and the gunpowder lay, there's a firing range in order to test the velocity of the bullets. Between the years 1945 and 1948, the secret bullet factory was able to produce 4 million bullets and help establish the State of Israel.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
The Jewish people had high hopes. As the Balfour Declaration of 1917 stated that the British Mandate would be given back to the Jewish people so they could establish a new country in their ancestral homeland. And they handed the remainder of the British Mandate to the UN, who voted on November 29, 1947, to partition the land. Part of it for the Arabs, part of it for the Jews.
Abstain. The United States? Yes. Yugoslavia? Abstain.
Resolution of the DUC Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstentions.
When the results were in, the Jewish people's dream of independence, at least in some of our land, had come true. The people celebrated. However, the Arabs rejected this idea and began attacking the Jewish communities. For the next 6 months, the Jewish people suffered many attacks from our Arab neighbors. However, it wasn't until we declared our independence that 5 standing armies attacked our young state and began what would be known here in Israel as the War of Independence. David Ben-Gurion was born in Poland in the year 1886, and already as a small child he was involved with Zionist activity. And by the time he's 20, he makes the best decision of his life, the decision to return to his ancestral homeland, to the land of Israel. He quickly becomes a leader in the existing Jewish community. By 1935, he becomes the head of the Jewish Agency and the de facto leader of the Jewish people living here during the British Mandate. When that mandate ended on May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion stood in front of roughly 400 people in the city of Tel Aviv and declared the independence of the Jewish state of Israel. How did Israel's independence come about? Well, after roughly 30 years of British rule known as the British Mandate, the English government decided to pull out of the land of Israel. This was going to take place on May 15, 1948. It would make sense for Israel and the Jewish people to declare our independence on that day. However, a Jew is not allowed to acquire something on the holy day of the Sabbath known as Shabbat. Therefore, we needed to declare our independence and acquire our new state before the Sabbath came in, and that's why David Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv on May 14, 1948, declared our independence.
תוקף זכותנו הטבעית וההיסטורית ועל יסוד החלטת עצרת האומות המאוחדות אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל, היא מדינת ישראל.
An interesting fact of that historic moment that we just watched is that David Ben-Gurion was not reading from the scroll of independence. Rather, he was reading from a draft copy. Because you see, the 37 members of the People's Council could not agree on the exact wording until the last moments. So, all the members, including David Ben-Gurion, signed the declaration at the bottom, but the writing was only filled in after the Shabbat, the Sabbath. It was almost like signing a blank check. Let's continue as we learn more about Israel's independence. Prior to 1948, nobody wanted to sell planes to the Jews living in the British Mandate. However, everyone realized the writing on the wall and war was imminent. That's when ex-pilots from the British Royal Air Force smuggled in English-made Auster J-1 autocrat planes to defend the Jewish residents living in the area. On May 14, 1948, Israel declares our independence. On that very same day, 6 standing Arab armies attack our young nation. From the south, the mighty Egyptian army with their ground troops, artillery, tanks, and their well-equipped air force. It was at that moment that Israel realized that we needed to have actual fighter planes. So Israeli agents acting in Czechoslovakia purchased 4 Messerschmitt planes, just like the one you see behind me. They disassembled them, loaded them on a much larger aircraft, and flew them directly to Israel, where they were reassembled and in a few short days used in combat. In one of their very first missions, they were able to halt the Egyptian Air Force 20 minutes south of Tel Aviv. This delivered a devastating blow to the psyche of the Egyptians, who didn't even realize that Israel had an air force of our own. The tank behind me is a French Hotchkiss. It was purchased by Israel in 1948 during the War of Independence and fought in many of the campaigns. As you can see, Israel's great military had very humble beginnings. Even these humble beginnings, though, allotted us a victory in 1948 and, of course, gave Israel our independence. During the British Mandate, the English built various Tigre fortresses all around the country in order to control strategic areas. It was their policy to give it over to the prevalent population, whether it was Jewish or whether it was Arab. This particular Tigre fortress you see behind me was given over to the Arab population, and it controlled the highway from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Unfortunately, in 1948, we did not secure this area, and it didn't become part of Israel until 1967 during the defensive war known as the Six-Day War. The War of Independence ended here in Eilat. The last operation, Operation Uvda, in order to secure the Negev, took place in 1949. And on March 10th, Israel raised our flag here in Eilat, marking the end of the war.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
How is Israel's independence celebrated today? The day before is Memorial Day. The Jewish people here in Israel go from mourning to celebration with the setting of the sun. The official celebration that marks the beginning of Independence Day is held on Mount Herzl, the military cemetery here in Jerusalem. I'm standing here now with David Breakstone, who is the founder and director of the Herzl Center and Museum, as well as the vice chairman of the World Zionist Organization, which was originally founded by Theodor Herzl. Here in Israel, we commemorate Memorial Day, the fallen soldiers within our IDF. And then all of a sudden, it becomes Israel's Independence Day. What is it like here in Israel, and particularly here on this mountaintop?
Okay. Having Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, move right into Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, I think serves as a constant reminder to us both of what it is that we're fighting for, and the obligation that all of those of us who are around to celebrate Independence Day, the obligation we have to those who have fallen. And that obligation, of course, is again to realize that we're not just living in a state to be taken for granted. It's a state that we have to keep working on developing, and that we owe it to our brethren and our sisters and brothers who have laid down their lives to make of it something very special. The experience itself is very jarring. There's nobody who lives here who doesn't have a relative, a friend, an acquaintance who is buried in one of Israel's military cemeteries, who has been a casualty of a terrorist attack. So that certainly those who are first-degree relatives, it's an extremely difficult day, but for all of us, it's a day of it's a very somber day. And therefore, for all of us, making that transition is difficult. But as I said, it's a constant reminder. Being up here on Har Herzl at that transition time and the amazing ceremony that takes place here is made that much more meaningful on Independence Day because of what we just came after. So the meaning of the two, the intersection between the two is probably unique. I don't know of any other country that has that juxtaposition of the two. And it's part of what this country is all about.
the country begins to celebrate with fireworks, concerts, and all-night parties. The following day, people are out barbecuing in the national parks, beaches, and forests. There are parades, military flybys, as well as events throughout the entire country. Israel, perhaps more than any other country, realizes the constant threat to our independence and the cost of preserving it. Therefore, it's no surprise that Israel knows how to celebrate as well. Join us next time on Land of the Bible as we discover the archaeology, the battlefields, the modern enterprise of Israel's northern volcanic region, the Golan Heights. Thank you for watching Land of the Bible. Remember, I'm David Sussman, your personal tour guide here in the land of Israel. Make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and lands of the Bible.